I founded a company on H1B because, AI was happening. And this is around the time I was very desperate because, you have an opportunity, you have an idea, you're waiting for a visa, you have like everything's happening, you miss it by 2 months, you never know, are you going to regret for the rest of your life if you never take this chance? So I did a lot of research and I was scared too. Like, can I start a company on H1B? What is possible? What is not possible? Like, how much can I engage? So I started trial and error as an investor, right? I had a co-founder, and we started, this entity, thinking about it, what it could happen, and started developing it. And my goal was to get it to a point where it can start generating revenue. So I have a safety net, and I could see that this entity can afford my salary. Because once that was true, I could have this entity transferred by H1B, and I could just start working for it, right? And start taking paychecks officially. So that's what happened in 2024. I filed for H1B visa through my company. And then I moved there. I left my job and I was part of Trial and Error Inc. And then this year, a month ago, August, I think, Ryan, this is like while I was talking to you, right, on this topic,
Congratulations.
I got my green card. So after 1 year.
I saw your article on LinkedIn, and that is why I reached out to Sid. I think he has an amazing story to share, especially people under similar situations. They're changing companies, they're experiencing layoffs. They want to find out a way if it is possible for me to get my own H1B. So let me circle back to that point. I think a lot of people want to ask you. You mentioned that you are an investor at first of this company. And then is there any quote unquote percentages of shares that you can have maximum, or
Yeah,
what kind of titles that you possess when you do the H1B transfer to make sure that is successful?
correct. So that is the key question. Now, why is that it's so important? Because the stipulation for H1B is that you have to have an employer-employee relationship with the business. That translates to you not having veto powers, which translates to somebody needs to be able to fire you. That's the crux of it, right? So number one criteria, you got to meet the salary. Your job has to be specialized based on your degree and your skill, right? The basic H1B rule. But to be part of the company that you own, right? I owned more than 50% of Trial and Error, and I had to have a more complex case because I had to also prove that somebody can still fire me. So how would I achieve that? The way you do it is that you create a board of directors. And board of directors sit on top of companies. Board of directors also don't have to have salaries. They also don't have to have equities. They have voting rights. It's a basic, corporate law thing, nothing to do with immigration, right? A business has a board of directors, they have voting rights. So when I started a company, as a founder, I was part of the board. My co-founder was part of the board, and I added one more board member. And then I could prove that each one of us have equal voting rights. So it's 2 out of 1. If they both vote together to fire me out of my own company, even though I'm more equity, that's totally doable. So I don't have veto powers over the ultimate decisions that the company will take on board meetings. So that proves employer-employee relationship. If you ever
Yes.
work with an attorney that will help you with this is not something that's like, I think what I'm talking about is not even a hack. Don't think that I'm talking about a hack here. Okay. That's like literally the legal way. This is how the board works.
And then just to repeat, this is wonderful information. Just to repeat what you said, I wanted to confirm that I wanted to make sure that everybody get this. So you mentioned that you can create a board if you wanted to do this. And then all of these board members, like any one of these board members, do they have to have some share of the company? Do they have to have working relationships, all of them to the company, or some of them doesn't have to be an owner?
Now the board, I mean, I had advisors, right? So I was on the board, my co-founder was the board. Now I actually, the couple of things I'll say. One thing I'll say is that you can put your family members, right, as board members and say like, hey, look, I have board members and they can have there's 5 members and all that because USCIS is looking at legit businesses. They're looking at like, are you like scamming her? Like, is this real or not? So you can have a board member that you can appoint, and it's a bylaws document that governs a company, right? So it's all based on your company formation documents that gives voting rights to these board members, Ryan. It's not even with immigration. It's more like, do you have a business? And in that business, Ryan or Sid, do you have a board member that controls the business, or are you the dictator?
Mm.
The rule of H1B is that you have to have an employer-employee relationship. So you have to prove that, like, there is a board that can oversee me, and if the business is required to survive, they can still fire me, right? So they just have people who are on top of you, but they don't have to have a salary, and board members don't have to have equity.
And then question number 5, did you register the company under your name or a US citizen? And then what are the considerations you have when you're starting a business on an H1B? I think you talked about this, but I think this is pretty important. Maybe we can kind of go back to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I had a co-founder, and my co-founder is in Canada, and so he's not a U.S. citizen. I'm not a U.S. citizen, and so when you start a company, there are many ways to do it. So, I mean, you're gonna have a bunch of questions like, is it an LLC? Is it a Delaware C corp? Is it, whatnot? And it's a little beyond immigration, by the way. It depends on what business you have. Are you gonna raise funding? A lot of time when I'm gonna talk about like straight like tech VC style startup, which is Delaware C corp, and they like it for the laws in Delaware and funding reasons and all that. When I started my business, when I like funded a business, I thought I will raise money from VCs. So Delaware C Corp was like very easy for me to think about. So I was part of that team and I started the company there with my co-founder. $400 Stripe Atlas or $200 a different service. You get a company in like 3 days.
Hmm. Are you doing all of this by yourself, or do you always have an
Yeah,
immigration attorney to help
good
you?
question. Good question. Look, the reason I wrote the article I wrote was because I was like in pretty much perpetual darkness for like 2 years to figure all these things out, right? And I've been in this country for 14, 15 years. Now, what happens when you go online and Google, as an H1B, can I start a company? You get a lot of misleading and confusing information, right? I mean, the first two forums you'll click on will say that, oh, no, you'll get deported tomorrow, right? Because they don't understand the question. It's not like you're working for a company, right? Getting a payroll illegally from an entity that doesn't sponsor H1B is obviously illegal. But to start an entity, so it's very, very nuanced. So yeah, I had to figure all of these things out. That's why I wrote it. And immigration lawyers, I think the only thing I'll say is that it depends on you getting the good one. It's no different than you finding a good doctor, right? It's like some doctors are really good, but some can screw you up too. So you gotta really get a couple of opinions there, and it's costly too. So I think what Ryan and the group is doing with you guys here, providing information, is these are the kind of channels, and you're here, right? You're seeking information. So what you're doing right now, this question is exactly what I did. Like go into find people and connect the dots and look at, I'm sharing my information here, right? There are a lot of people giving back to the community. So find those people and talk to people who have been through the experiences. That'll be more helpful.